Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the AOR Season 15 PC Racing Championship in F7. We are here at round 7 at Hungary and hopefully trying to get a better result than what we came away with last time at Silverstone. If you watched that video you would have seen that on the back of an unfortunate start after losing position at the very first corner, we ended up being disconnected about halfway through a race, so we couldn't even make our comeback drive to the top 10. So going into this race, felt rather confident. I'd put in quite a bit of practice in both time trials and social races. I was feeling pretty good going into this qualifying session. If you saw my previous video the other day, I showed you one of my time trial laps, where in that video I was using 410 wings. I actually ended up changing that to 511. And both in time trial I did a better lap by 2/10, and I just felt that maybe on heavy fuel load it was a bit more stable and consistent and would be easier to control over the duration of a race. So we're also using 11 ballast because particularly in sector 2 it really does help you to get that extra turn into particularly places like the chicane. Those corners you really can make up a lot of time there, so it can just give you that bit extra. So starting this qualifying session, just trying to keep the tyre temperatures up. There's been some sort of incident in front of us. I'm not really sure what was going on there. So trying to start the lap, not really the best of exits, so you get a bit of wheel spin, run slightly wide of the apex. You want to try and cut back on that, give it a really good late apex to get the better onto this straight as possible. So down into the first corner, braking just after 100 meter board, into third gear, wrapping around the corner, missed the apex slightly, and we've just been a bit heavy-handed on the power, and unfortunately we would have already failed the lap, so just try and make sure we don't impede anyone else. So that's one lap through and a couple of minutes on the qualifying that we've lost, but we're going to give it another go, get a much better exit onto the start finish straight. You see that currently on provisional pole, what master was 117.9. I knew I could definitely do a time that was better than that, but it was really a case on this circuit, it's really difficult to make sure you can put it all together. It's quite twitchy at times and you can lose it easily, and there's also some places where you can invalidate the lap. So about halfway through sector 2, this corner very tricky on power, but if you get it right you can really make up some serious time. So we're coming up to the top of the hill now, we're about to cross through sector 1 and we are purple and up by 2.5 tenths, so a pretty good sector there. Into this corner, if you downshift too quickly you can actually start to lose the rear end, but we get through there quite nicely. Through a chicane, if you get too heavy on those curves you will either invalidate your lap or jump over them and lose a lot of time. This middle sector is looking quite good. Would have liked to have been slightly tighter to that apex if possible, but not too bad. There was a running through the fast right hand and cut to the inside, and we've just run millimeters over the top of that curve, just a bit too far. So that would be the end of that lap. So that's now 2 laps that we've already lost, and we're now in the final stages of qualifying. And this is it now. This is where we have to put together some proper laps, because you see we still haven't actually put anything on the board. So starting the lap for a third time now. And we're coming down to turn 1, down to third gear, no lockups, open up steering, nice and early on the power and good exit. I actually ended up changing my diff from 100% to 90% after that incident in my first lap, just because I'd found that it was just that bit easier to get onto the power without losing the back end too much. So we've got through the next couple of corners quite nicely there. As we come up to the end of sector 1 and we're still going purple in this first sector, that's very good for us. Not the best of corners here, we got it turned in just about, but was a little bit tardy on getting the power down, and then very cautious entry into that chicane. At this point really just want to set a decent banker up and make sure that we actually get something on the board that's pretty good. So sector 2 hasn't been too bad, could have been quicker, and through here this time nice and aggressive and no such problems as turns with concerns of running wide. You see we're actually still up as Luke goes and does a 17.4. So we're just starting to round off the final sector now. If you hook yourself over that ditch too much you will lose the back end, so you've got to avoid that slightly, but you do want to get as close as possible. So final corner, not a fantastic entry through there, that was not great, but it is good enough for provisional P2. It's just inside of the 117.9 mark and we edge out Wattmaster, but we're actually going to go and do one more lap here because the tyres can just about do it, and I feel like if we can put the lap together we can challenge for pole. So this sector 1 has been a bit better so far, just being a little bit more aggressive. We can risk it slightly more now that we know we've done a decent time. So we come up to sector 1 split, we are fractionally up on the best time so far. So we are definitely good throughout sector. We get slightly hooked over that curb, which is not what you want to do, but we do at least keep it quite nicely under control. Taking a bit more curves through chicane that time, bit of wheel spin on the exit, but I think overall we were slightly quicker through there. So the sector 2, it hasn't been perfect, it's been slightly scruffy, but I think we have improved slightly. So coming through here, slightly wide of that apex, but we still keep it on track, and we are up by 2.5 tenths, but we are down by 0.2 of a second to Luke. He put together a very solid sector 2 there. So we're just rounding off the lap. We get that nicely turned in on the power nice and without too much wheel spin as we come through the final corner, down into fourth, trying to get it turned in. Not quite as close as I wanted to be, but carry a lot of speed through there. And as we go to cross the line, it's 1:17.5 with less than a tenth of a second off pole position, but that would be good enough for us to get P2 in the session. I think people generally struggled around here just to get a lap put together because of those invalidations, but we would get quite a good position. Quite a good showing from both Neil was putting a very good lap there, but also our new teammate after having had Popsu drop out the season and then had temporary teammate of Ranger, who's now taken full-time at Haas, I believe. We now have Toonvis that is going to be our teammate for the rest of the season, and he's put in a very good solid showing for his first qualifying session of this season so far. So as far as going into the race, feeling good. Race pace, like I say, has been consistent. In one of my social races, I was actually up against someone from F2 in the PS4 leagues, and I only finished 4 seconds behind them in the end, so was feeling quite good about that. So really, this is an easy one-stop. Bit of variation you can do. Some people might like to pit around lap 10 and take the mediums to the end. I preferably would like to do the super softs to the softs. Because we did an extra lap during qualifying on these tyres, although usually I would pit around lap 14, I was going to plan to pit 1 lap earlier, because otherwise I could end up losing time. And it's unlike Spain, for example, the undercut here is incredibly powerful, but also it's very, very bad if you get stuck in traffic, because not being an easy track to overtake at, and that middle sector being so crucial to the lap, it's really, really important that you don't get held up there. But as you see, we're about to start, lights are going out, we're about to bring in the clutch, build up the res, and we get the launch. It's a little bit of wheel spin off the start, it's not bad. We're putting up in a rich fuel mixture to cover off from Neil behind us. We're into the slipstream with Luke. He hasn't actually completely covered off the inside into turn 1, so we're going to have a look down the inside. Go a little bit over the curb just to make sure we don't make contact, but it's a pretty clean exit. We're still right on him, we're still in rich fuel mixture, but for now we're just not going to be able to make a move. He runs slightly wide, but he gets a good exit out of that corner, and then onto the end of sector 1, and we wouldn't be able to do it from there. Wattmaster has actually made up the position on Neil, and he comes through. In these early stages, I tend to end up using 5th through that corner, because otherwise it's quite easy to run out onto the exit and get extension warnings. But we get through there. We went a bit wide at the beginning of sector 2, but we haven't lost too much time. We're still very much staying in touch with Luke at this point in time. This track, it's amazing how quickly you can accumulate penalties and track warnings. This corner as well is another example of that. You see Luke really pushing out to the limits right there, trying to gap us and get out of DRS before lap 3, but we are staying right on his turn. You can see that we've actually ourselves as a pair really started to pull away from the people behind us. We've already created almost a second gap as we come to the end of lap 1. We're following Luke through. He's got quite a nice exit there, but we are still very much in contention for this first place. So on to lap 5 now. You can see we're still onto the back of him. Wattmaster has dropped down behind us, and then pack after him have dropped away. And we're coming through his corner. Luke has gone slightly wide. He might have got a warning for that, I'm not sure. We're still going purple, and at this point in the race I would definitely say that we had the faster car. We're really trying to push on as much as possible. So coming to the end of lap 5 now, trying to keep everything nice and neat and tidy so that we get a good exit onto the start-finish straight to open up DRS. He's run a little bit wide, we're cutting nicely back to the inside. Really, that's the sort of line I was trying to get during qualifying to start those laps. You can see we've set the fastest lap of the race. We're within half a second of Luke in front of us. Bit too far back to do anything into turn 1, but he does go slightly deep into the corner. We stayed nice and tight, opening up the DRS. We put it into rich fuel mixture. We're going to stay in the toe. He does cover the inside. We can go to the outside. We've just run a bit deep. We're losing the back end, but we barely hold on to it. Got a little bit optimistic there with braking. I think on the heavy fuel load and the tyres are starting to lose their best performance was a move which was never likely to be pulled off, to be honest. So we're now in the middle of lap 8. You see we're still right on the back of Luke. Return has dropped out the session. I believe he had quite a difficult qualifying at the beginning of a race, and he's back in. You see we're still trying to push on as hard as possible as we almost lose the back of the car there. I'm not sure what's going on with this lobby. It's registering that we're in third with Luke in second, but I can definitely tell you with absolute reassurance that we were fighting for the lead at this point in the race. Wattmaster has produced quite a big gap behind him now, so he's staying vaguely in touch with us, but still just a bit too far back to do anything. Luke getting a bit of oversteer onto the start-finish straight. We're starting lap 9 now, and we're still very much within DRS, with Wattmaster being just under 2 seconds behind us. Into turn 1, still too far to do anything. Ran a bit deeper than I probably would have liked, but we do get it stopped in time without locking up. We're just trying to follow him through sector 1 now and pick up on any mistakes that he might make. On heavy fuel load, making that shift into third gear can sometimes be a bit treacherous. If you don't take your time to let the car slow down to the right sort of speed, you can lose the back end. We're following through here. We're now starting to use 6th gear for that corner, and we're really trying to push on now. You see, we've got Livingston, who was the car that we came across with some sort of issues in qualifying before, and we've caught up to the back of him now in sector 2. I'm not sure what sort of connection issues he's had. Luke runs into the back and comes across, and he's come back across and hit us. We get taken out. We're trying to get off him. Wattmaster's then being collected by the same car. We try to get going again. We get boxed in by Wattmaster, get stuck behind the AI car, stuck behind him again. And within the space of 2 corners, we've lost contention for the lead and we've lost second. I was angry. There's no doubt about it. I was angry and I was determined to try and win this race because I knew that I had it in me. We barely lost out at Spain, but I was determined to not see that happen again. So really pushing on now. So you can see already caught up to the back of Wattmarsh again. We've had the other Ferrari closing on us behind us. We're in the slipstream, put up the rich fuel mixture. We're just going to break in slightly deeper into turn 1 than him. Run slightly wide, but we get on the power nicely. You see the Ferrari actually gets quite a good exit at that corner. He's now challenging for 3rd place. And we get the pass done. And now really from here, it was a case of just using the clean air and really using the pace that we have shown that we've got so far in this race. As we come to the end of sector 1, we're now just under 6 seconds down. We've gone from being easily within half a second and the far quicker car to being nowhere near. You see it's still hovering around that sort of gap as we come to the end of our first stint on Super Softs. We've pulled out a gap to the car behind us, but now it would be time to go onto those tyres, because with those incidents, with my mistake when trying to pass Luke and all the locking up that went on during the incident with Livingston, and the extra lap during qualifying, these tyres have definitely had it now. If we want to make up that time on Luke, we're going to have to go for an undercut strategy. So pitting onto the soft tyres, we were fortunate that we don't actually have to replace our front wing. We could definitely have done with the amount of times we managed to make contact with that McLaren, but now is a case of really trying to make effective use of this fresh rubber and put out some really good laps. We're going to come out just inside the middle of some traffic, behind one car, braking slightly deep into turn 1, try and make sure we don't get stuck between 2, and we now have to try and get past Clint as quick as possible. And unfortunately, because of the way this track works, you see he runs slightly wide. We can't risk making a move there as he comes back across us, and we have to deal with this as soon as possible, because the wind was already falling out of our grasp at this point. Getting stuck in traffic after this was not what we wanted. And see, coming through sector 2 now, nowhere that we can really go from here. It's just single file for most of it, but you see he's losing a bit of traction. I believe he actually started on these tyres, so they are definitely old. So we try and stay nice and tight on the left, cut back to the right. We get great traction out of there. We're actually going to go around the outside. We just about hold it as we're going to here, have to shift down an extra gear to make sure we make it without track extending. and we've got that move done, so we've at least managed to escape the traffic within the lap, so that was very important for us if we were going to have any chance of getting back into the lead. You see the McLaren seems to have had some sort of incident at the end of Sector 3 there. I'm assuming that's just tyres are worn and a bit too greedy on the power, so as we're coming onto lap 15 now, both the people in front of us have made their pit stop, and Luke is still very much far ahead. And unfortunately during the course of all of those incidents we have lost quite a chunk of time there. You can see that by the end of this 4.8 second gap, so we have actually gone purple on this lap and taken a chunk out of him. You can see the bit of a glitchy time screen there, but we're still going purple. And then on lap 17 it's just our luck, because this isn't for position. We've been disconnected again. And at this point I had some vague hope because I saw that it recognised that Wattmaster had done the fastest lap, but deep down I knew that once again, Codemasters, we had been struck by the hand. And our car would then drop down position after position, and that would be our race over. Such a shame. It just seemed destined for us that this race wasn't going to go our way. The incident with the AI car that didn't go for some reason, and what could have been a tremendous battle and possibly even our maiden win for AOR in this season turned into a complete disaster. So that's now 2 races in a row where we could have made some great points and great gains in the championship, and instead it's fallen apart. But in spectator mode we rejoin with a battle for 5th, 6th and 7th. 7th being Livingston, who seems to have sorted out whatever issues they were having earlier on in the race. I'm not sure what was going on there. But yeah, this was a very close fight. Clinton, obviously the driver we were in contention with when we were trying to get through the traffic, he's made his pit stop now onto the medium tyres. I'm not entirely sure why he would run that. Maybe he wasn't too confident at stretching out the soft tyres to the point where the super softs would have been viable. But that was a quite big tussle for position there. We're now on board with our new teammate who, through all of that chaos, has managed to work himself up into quite a good position, and he comes in now on lap 23. This is really what I think Clint would have liked to have done with his pit stop, because now going onto the super soft tyres is going to be very, very competitive at the second phase of this race. So he had to get a front wing change there by the looks of it, and he's going to rejoin behind that group of 3 cars that we just saw. In actual fact, as he comes out of the pit, it's going to be very close between him and the other McLaren. The McLaren just about gets out in front and tries to make a move down the inside, but there's just not room. But this is super soft tyres, as fresh as you like, with a very, very determined driver trying to make a great debut. You see he's got a fantastic exit out of there. He's not going to be able to do anything as we come up the hill. It's just not an area that's really suitable for overtaking. He's giving it a go, but he wisely pulls back in behind the McLaren. So for now they would hold on to that position. But now you see, coming to the end of lap 24, now you see he stayed very close behind, hasn't made any inroads during sector 2, but has DRS open as we come down into turn 1. Is going to get him under braking. Slight lock up, but that could be a spectator glitch, to be honest. Gets a fantastic exit through there. McLaren would try to come back at him, but just with those old tyres, there's nothing particularly he's going to be able to do, and that would be the position over and done with. And now 6 seconds behind that group of 3 that was still battling up ahead, but you can see that he's already taken 2 seconds out of that gap and closing in faster and faster. Come to the beginning of lap 25 into turn 1 as our teammate now sets the fastest lap of the race. Clint is trying to make some sort of move onto the Renault. He hangs it around the outside. He gets fantastic drive out of turn 1, opens up the DRS again. To come into turn 2, he's trying to go down the inside. The Renault is trying to hang out, but it just hasn't got the traction to do that, and would lose the position. Our teammate is now closed right up onto the back of this pack, and they've remained kind of constant from there. See Clint goes slightly wide, Renault gets it all wrong and hooked over that curb. And Toro Rosso really trying to make a move onto the McLaren now, but wouldn't be able to do anything. But until lap 27, where opening up the DRS and in the slipstream, he would now try and make a very similar move onto the other McLaren into turn 1. So tries to get him under brakes, spots this braking point, gets a nicely turn, and on the power, and that would be it. The McLaren just wouldn't have anything that he could fight with there. He's on older, slower tyres, and just nothing he can do. As now we're staying on board with our teammate who gets a fantastic run through turn 2 and 3. He's right on the back of these two cars ahead, which are struggling for grip and they're losing time because they're battling between each other. As the Renault in front actually gets himself a corner cutting penalty for, I think, for skipping over that curb. Toro Rosso has got great traction out there but can't make anything into the chicane. Almost runs into the back of the Renault there. It's really not what you want to do. He's made up so much ground and so much time in his final stage of the race that to lose it there with a lock-up would be absolutely terrible. But Clint has got it slightly wrong through the end of Sector 2, runs slightly wide, and the Toro Rosso is going to be 3 wide coming into the beginning of Sector 3. Almost makes contact, so close together. And as we're coming through this corner, the Renault's gone slightly wide, Clint's having to stay in tight, and our teammate would brilliantly slot it in between and get 2 cars in 2 corners, and that would be him up into 3rd position, and Clint would try to open up the DRS onto the start-finish straight, but would have nothing to work with, and that was a great set of moves, as unfortunately Johan has then run straight into the back of the McLaren and taken off a chunk of his wing, which is really going to slow him down for the last part of this race. Our teammate did have a bit of a wobble as we come into turn 2. He just about hung onto the car, but that would be it, and he would go on to pull away from this pack, as now the other McLaren has caught up to the slightly wounded Renault after losing that chunk of wing, and unfortunately after having led that pack he's now just dropping position after position. So into turn 1, DRS is open, tries to get him under braking, he locks up slightly, cuts to the inside and leaves him a bit of space on the outside, but that would be a relatively easy position done. The Renault does try to come back, does go to the inside, but just hasn't got the grip at the front of the car anymore to fight for that position. Slower tyres, older tyres, and that front wing at Hungary really affects you. As you see now, the Sauber has caught up to the back of the Renault in just a couple of laps as well, and before we even make it down to turn 1 he has the move done. It's just getting worse and worse. At this point, with the gap that the Renault had to the pack behind, I would have expected him to have made a pit stop to get a new front wing and fresh tyres, but he stuck it out, and that's fair enough. I don't think it would have made a huge impact to his overall position. You see now as Luke is coming through beginning of sector 2 to come past our car, and at this point I was shocked. I thought he'd completely lost the car and that he'd binned it, and then I realised that not only was that a bit of lag or a connection issue, that we'd actually managed to disconnect 1 lap before the end of the race, even in spectator mode, which was amusing to say the least. Codemasters also really did not want to provide us with a stable connection for this Grand Prix whatsoever. Although this podium is slightly glitched out, obviously using the faces of the AI drivers of the cars that they took over, I can confirm that they are the same positions that everyone finished in. So it would be Luke that would go on to win this Grand Prix, with Wattmaster finishing in 2nd, and with a fantastic debut for the Toro Rosso team. Our teammate Tunvis, new to the F7 league, would take 3rd position, so a fantastic race for him. But unfortunately, that would be it. So after what looked like such a promising start, that would be the end of our race weekend. So hopefully better things to come at Spa, but we shall have to see. But until next time, goodbye.